I want to hearken people's minds back to 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, where everyone had to keep their children in a room for 2 weeks by themselves if they contracted the super flu. They had to put them in a box, no physical contact. They had to be in a room. Do you know what it is psychologically for a human to do that? Solitary confinement for one day. I dare you to do that to a child for 2 weeks, and then they will come out, interact with somebody, and go back in for 2 weeks. I saw that many a times. Literal child abuse is what occurred. Now, if we go in and we say, what was happening there? Now, when they would ask me on the call, has anyone got it? Yes, a few people have got it. In the school, they would ask, and are they self-quarantining? Because they can't go on, even on the Zoom calls then, they weren't allowed to go on. If they weren't, you couldn't even be on the Zoom call. I remember I had to pretend I wasn't in the room. This is how ridiculous it was. And everyone complied. Everyone complied. And if you didn't, like me, I never complied to anything, you had to self-censor. And that was the beginning of self-censorship. This was the start of the Stalin-esque, the communist version, where you self-censor. Did you put your kid in quarantine? Yes, I did, Mrs. Blogs. Yes, I did. I put them in quarantine for 2 weeks. Are they there by themselves? Yes, they are there by themselves. Did you give them the clot shot? Yes, I gave them that thing, the poison. Yeah, I gave it to them. Now they can come back in. Otherwise, they have to stay at home for a month, unless they were injected with the poison before. This is what happened then. Now, we come now, and by the way, before then there were always hate crime laws. There were always hate crime laws before the super flu. So before then there was always, but they were very, very rarely used. As people were locked down indoors and people were online more, the amount, and obviously they could come into your house. We saw many instances where they came into your house where you were trying to do a protest against it and whatever. Police would come in, raid your house. You were advertising a party, they would come in and raid your house. This is how it worked. The police started learning, well, we can just go online and arrest people. From what they do online, we're going to arrest them. This is how all this online safety bill, more online hatred, yeah, right. All this is just to censor free speech and to calm you down. Now, I don't even know if this will it'll probably be banned. Definitely shadow banned. But let's have a go anyway. Let's see where it gets. Because again, you can't say any of this. Remember, you cannot say. Only a few people, part of the system, are allowed to speak like this. Like, I don't know, Ben Shapiro or maybe a bit on GB News. But certainly people like me, like and subscribe, can't do this. So it's either going to be banned or shadow banned. But let's see. Anyway, self-censorship really started then. That was the birth of people starting to control what they said in public and realize other people are watching them. It has now become, self-censorship now is so rampant. People have said 86% of people say they self-censor at the workplace. This is a GB News finding. And the Daily Telegraph said 70% of students in university self-censor. Now, it's understandable that at work you don't want to get fired or whatever. Maybe we can understand you want to self-censor. But at university, what's your consequences? Are they going to throw you out? They're not going to throw you out. So why are you self-censoring? Why is 70% of students self-censoring? And the reason is because they have been programmed to be a sheep. That is what we are now doing, like the USSR. We are programming our young to think like a sheep. Don't think outside the box. Think woke, BLM, climate change, pro-Palestine, all this stuff. Fit the box. Be like everyone else. Don't think outside the box. If you do, don't mention it. Hide it. Keep it in secret little societies or something. This is where we are with our free speech. We have no free speech. And as I've said many times before, Russia last year jailed 400 people for saying stuff online that the government didn't like. The UK arrested 3,300 people, and they have half the population of Russia. You can speak to people in Russia. I do. They are more free. They've said it. They are more free than people in the West. These are people from the West. Sorry, people from the West. People from like the UK that moved to Russia are saying this. I got one guy who was in the British Army that is currently living with his new wife in Moscow, and he said it is more free there than it is in the UK. So it's bad. You don't know it because you've been gaslighted and you don't realize, but I dare you to say it. Now, I'll give you an example. I spoke to an HR manager a few days ago. He told me this is what he's dealing with. This girl, Emily, at work, goes to the toilet. Her colleague goes, do you know where Emily is? So this guy goes, yeah, she's gone to the toilet. He was charged with sexual harassment, going to the toilet. I'm not joking with you. Next one. A girl says to this guy, calls HR and says he's been terrible on the project. So he's called in by HR saying, apparently you've been, mucking around on the project. The guy says, I'm not even working with her. We work in separate divisions, but they can still issue a claim upon you. Another one. Guy accused of micromanaging and giving too much leeway. The guy goes to HR, these are contradictory. How can you say I'm micromanaging and giving too much leeway? They contradict. You still have to reply to both claims against you. Speaking to people in the business world, in the office culture, people just now keep their head down. There used to be football, weather, and what you're doing for holiday, the only three topics you could talk about. I would say definitely holidays out of the question now, because you're going to make some comment about where they're going, and maybe you're probably still allowed football and weather. That's about it. That's all you can discuss in an office now. It is becoming the USSR 100%. Don't talk about your business, don't talk about your family, don't talk about your views, don't talk about what you think. If they're waving certain rainbow flags in front of you, you freaking wave that flag. You put that pin on. They're pro-Palestine shouting intifada, intifada. You don't say a word. Don't mention a word. Just agree. If they're saying put the mask on, you put that mask on, baby. You put 2 masks on. You put it on when you're in a cubicle by yourself. You put it on in a car. You do what is needed. Because this is where we're living, guys. 2024, we are the most censored, the most self-censoring generation probably ever in the Western world. Probably ever. I mean, even in feudal times, when there were serfs, they were able to speak. They were able to insult. They were able to say things. But now everything is recorded and it will be held against you in a court of law. That is what we're seeing. So we are headed to with online safety bill, the hate speech laws in Scotland, where even if you speak at your dinner table in private in your house about something, you can be jailed. This is where we are now. So it's got now to levels of Americans, they say they're free. They're probably the least free. They self-censor probably the most because they are the ultimate sheep. They have to fit in to a box. They love it. Their dream is not to be different from the crowd. The madness of crowds. And this is where we are. So capitalism, free speech, and all that was meant to generate different ideas, which allowed for change, which allowed for new innovations. Now, because everyone just thinks the same and is not allowed to think the same. Yesterday, I got my first YouTube ban for a day. I wasn't allowed to make any comments for a day. Not that I comment much on YouTube. I think I've made 10 comments in a year on YouTube, but apparently my last comment got me a day ban. I've never had that before. I mean, this is obviously not talking about my channel, my personal YouTube account, where I'm just watching a video. Yeah, so this is how bad it's getting. So very scary times, guys. Gonna get worse.